in a way, this box here is where it all began. These are all drawings that I made when I was between 10 and maybe 15 years old. One of my first live drawings that I ever made, a drawing of my own hand. And as you can see, perfectly talent-free. The first time I tried painting with oil paint, a Balrog. Here is an old painting. Not quite sure what's going on there, but yeah. I mean, the truth is, painting is not my first love. It's not even my second love. My first love is animation. When I was a child, I wanted to be an animation artist. That's what I dreamed of. But then later, I fell in love with comics and I wanted to be a comic artist. And only then, when I was a teenager, maybe around 15, 16, that's where I discovered classic art and painting. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since, as you know. I really enjoy going through all of this stuff. It reminds me that it's been a long journey and a lot of work and thousands of hours, and everyone starts somewhere. But one thing I think is pretty clear, if you just look at this small collection of drawings and paintings that I did as a teenager, I have a wide field of interests. And it's always been like that. Interest in materials, in techniques, in subjects, in art styles, and a lot of these things, even though I don't really do them on a day-to-day basis anymore, they are still part of what I love to do and part of my artistic repertoire, if you will. So I'm super excited that I get to work on something that's kinda harking back to my beginnings, and there is so much we have to talk about. How I got from this, literally this, to where I am today, takeaways from 20 years of doing this, and also how to turn a MacBook into a work of art. Because that's the quest we are on in this video. We are going to turn the Lima from Honkai Impact 3rd into a work of art. I got a bunch of materials here that I've never tried before. Acrylic markers here, very interesting. What else do I have? Of course, snacks, very important. And I also have acrylic gouache paint, which I also never tried before. And I gotta say, I don't even know what to expect here. If you think about it, the biggest difference between acrylic paint and gouache paint is that one can be reactivated with water and the other can't. So what does it even mean if something is both acrylic and gouache paint? I have no idea, but I guess we'll find out. Since I don't really know yet which materials I'm gonna end up using and which painting surface I'm gonna end up painting on, is it gonna be aluminum? Is it gonna be plastic? I think we have to play around with these materials a bit and see what you can do with them. These are the acrylic gouache paints. I like the packaging, I gotta say. It says gouache, and then it says Artist's Acrylic Polymer Emulsion, Opaque Colors. Color me intrigued, because I really don't know what to expect here. Well, this is already promising, because the color, this one at least, is super crazy vibrant. This even more so. This is almost like neon paint. Okay, I like it. I think what I'm gonna do now is create a little setup where we can try things out. Maybe we're in for a few surprises. So the quest for this video is to make an anime manga style painting on a MacBook. At least, sort of. And whenever I do something like this, where I do something that I've never done before or something that I'm not perfectly comfortable with, one of the things that I like to do is to experiment, just to see what my options are. I know this might be a controversial opinion or a hot take, but I don't believe in talent. At least I don't think I have much talent. But what I do believe I have is curiosity. Ever since I can remember, I've always been curious. Curious how things work. Curious to understand the nature of things. Curious to understand the processes of things. And this intense curiosity, I believe, is one of the main reasons that I was able to turn myself into the man I am today. I don't believe that I was born with an innate talent for all the things that you see me do. But I do believe that I made myself into that person over
years and years of practice and trial and error. Of course, with a project like this, I also could have just went straight to my brushes and my oil paint, and I could have just went for it. But I do believe that if that was my personality, I probably wouldn't be at the point where I am today. I've always been like this. In this case here, I try out different materials and different material combinations on different surfaces because I want to understand them, how these processes could be combined with each other, etc., etc. And all of that, hopefully, will contribute to creating the best work of art that I can. And little spoiler alert, as you will see, this whole thing will do a complete 180-degree turn at some point, because that's also part of who I am. First of all, that doesn't work. I mean, I could work much better on the clear surface here, on this plastic, than on the metal, because this was super slippery. But I guess now I should find out if it makes any difference if I sand the surface or prepare the surface in any way. I have painted on all kinds of different surfaces before. I have used every material you can think of, but not every material combination you can think of. So working with these materials here that I am admittedly not super familiar with, well, lots of surprises, lots of challenges. I mean, these strange acrylic gouache paint that I still don't really understand, that behaves pretty much like gouache paint. It's supposed to be water resistant, but it's certainly not. So I don't really know what to make of that. They're also not super opaque. They are like semi-transparent, and it's always really hard to cover something when you go over it just once. And then you have these Posca markers are sort of cool, but also incredibly limited in what you can do with them. They are kind of opaque, yes, but only on the first pass, it seems. If you go over it a second or third time, it almost starts to destroy itself. It's weird. I mean, I really tried to love them, but yeah. Talk about expectation versus reality. It looks a bit like I lost my mind, but the reason for this chaos here is that none of these materials here did what I expected them to. And the techniques that I was going to use also didn't work the way I was hoping they would. So what did I do? I ended up bringing out every material I have to try out every possible material and technique combination that I could think of to somehow make this painting project work. I think I found the best way, and it's actually quite interesting and kind of a throwback to my teenage years. But before we dive deeper into that, I gotta clean up first, and then we can finally get to work. After trying all kinds of different material and technique combinations, I decided against painting on the MacBook directly itself. Let's be real, that's actually never really a good idea. It always ends up looking sort of amateurish and half-assed, so I decided to go with a clear case instead. I also didn't want to paint directly on top of it because it would have created a very similar looking image to what I would have gotten if I painted on the MacBook directly. So what I decided to do was to create sort of an animation style / cell shading style painting, similar to what you would have seen back in the day with classic 2D animation. Normally, you would typically color a drawing and then put black outlines on top. But the way this works is actually the other way around. You start with black outlines and then you color the back of your clear painting surface. And what happens is that from one side you will have a huge mess, but from the other side, the real image will come to life and you'll be able to see something that looks actually like classical animation. It's actually pretty simple and straightforward, at least in theory.
You know, I have a feeling this whole thing from now on is gonna take me forever. The entire day I've been in the studio today, I spent mixing colors. Mixing colors, putting them all into these small cups here. I would say probably 24 different colors. And this is just prep work. The reason for this is that the entire process from now on will be less like painting and actually more like painting by numbers, which is fine. This is the proper way to do this, because if you apply your colors, you always want to make sure that whatever color you put down is always the same wherever you put it. That's absolutely essential for this style of coloring. But it just takes a ton of work. I mean, you have to pre-mix every color, you have to match them, you have to test them, make swatches. And this whole process actually makes me look at classical 2D animation in a completely different light, to be honest. I mean, I knew how much work it is to make animated movies, or how much work it was back in the day when everything was handmade. But now, just mixing these 24 colors here makes me appreciate it even more and makes me really wonder how people did it. Like, the sheer amount of work is absolutely insane.
It's really hard to put into words how much work this is and how difficult this is. I mean, not technically difficult, but it just takes a very long time and a lot of planning and preparation. And if you think about it in classical animation, one of these images here would be, well, just one of 24 that you would need to create 1 second of animation. So if I wanted to create 1 second of Thelema moving around doing something, just 1 second, I would have to do 24 of these. Not 5, not 10, but 24 technically. I have to admit, I'm still struggling to wrap my head around the fact that like every 2D animation that you grew up with was created like this and the sheer amount of work. But in any case, it's still like doable and fairly simple in principle. You just gotta be patient and also focus while doing it, but it's doable. But here's the thing, I wouldn't be me if this was the end of the story, right? I mean, ever since I can remember, I've always been the type of artist that put the art first and everything else second. For me, it's always about creating the best work of art that I can. So, well, you'll see.
Sometimes you have to put your ego aside and, well, do what's necessary and not necessarily what's comfortable. So there's gonna be a little change of direction. I mean, let's be real. Making a cell shading style of painting is fun and all, but not really the best use of my abilities and also not the best I can do. So we sat down, we talked about it, we brainstormed, and we came to the conclusion that we all actually want to see what the best thing is I can do. So that's what we're gonna do now. I mean, this is really what it means to be an artist for me. Putting everything you want aside to make the best art that you can. I have to admit, I'm even more excited about this now, because now we're actually going to see something that's even more interesting. Because my plan is to do something that maybe hasn't been done like this before, which is the blending of two worlds, the world of anime, manga, and the world of realism. At least that is my plan, if everything works out.
One of the answers to how I got to the point where I am today is obviously time. I mean, it just takes a long time. You gotta do it for a significant amount of time, and that obviously helps. Another part that I already touched on is, for sure, the whole jack-of-all-trades thing. Becoming an artistic Swiss Army knife. Knowing about different techniques, different materials, different styles. Being good and interested in a lot of different artistic fields helps a lot. More than people realize, actually. But the other thing is, and this is maybe even more important than any of the other things, and it's that I will do whatever it takes to create the best work of art I can. And if I have to start completely over after 1.5 weeks of work, that's what I will do. And I won't even think about it twice. I wish I could give people tips on how to create a similar mindset, but it's just something that comes very easy to me, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a strange character trait, but I will start over painting 10 times if that's what I gotta do. And I won't even be mad about it. Making a cell shading style animation painting isn't particularly hard to do. Anyone can really do it, to be honest. But this here, well, this is maybe only something that I can do. Because I'm a painter, first and foremost, an oil painter, and creating a manga-style image that blends sort of the world of figurative art and the world of anime manga, well, that is something that really gets me excited. I have to admit, I was only able to create an image like this because, well, this isn't the first time that I paint something in this style and with these materials. I know how oil paint behaves, I know what I have to do to create certain effects, I know which materials I have to use and in what amount and how to combine them to, well, get to the point where I want to get. And I know how to do it as quickly as possible. That's sort of the power that being a jack of all trades, artistic Swiss Army knife brings with it. In this case here, I knew that if I wanted to make this painting work, it had to be on a tinted surface. So instead of starting on a white canvas, I decided to give it a wash of acrylic paint and then start on a bluish, grayish tinted surface. And this helped me create almost the illusion of solid, flat color surfaces within one layer. I could probably have also used acrylic paint because, well, acrylic paint dries pretty much on the spot and then you can easily put several layers on top of each other within minutes or hours. But I specifically didn't want to do that because I still want to keep the oil painting character. I wanted to have this like almost smooth, buttery, velvety effect that you can only get with oil paint. And yeah, what can I say? It sort of worked like a charm. I used all sorts of different techniques and approaches to make this image work. Not just traditional oil painting techniques, but also techniques that are maybe more associated with illustrators, but then also materials that you maybe wouldn't expect or maybe didn't even know existed, like neon oil paint. And I use that to create her, well, sort of lasso/laser weapon. This is probably oil painting blasphemy for some artists out there, but I think it looks cool. And after working on this image for quite a bit, adding details, refining areas, putting on the last finishing touches and elements, there was still one tiny puzzle piece missing. Remember what the quest for this video was? Yeah, turning a MacBook into a work of art. And to make that happen, we decided that the best way to go about it would be to photograph the work of art, turn it into a vinyl sticker, and then put that sticker on top of the MacBook. And I gotta say, best decision ever. The final result turned out so much better than anything I could have ever painted on top of the MacBook. And it just goes to show you that in order to get the best results, sometimes you gotta take a detour. You gotta start over, you gotta be open to the possibility of, well, starting completely from scratch, but it's worth it most of the time. It definitely was here. And, well, you can see for yourself.